Hand over to James and Christy and the team on the waterfront edge protection.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. Kia ora koutou. First of all, I'm just going to ask Tian if she wouldn't mind handing around the map to members who are here, and we'll see if we can get it sent across to people who are online as well. This is just a map of the waterfront to give you a reference point for some of the things that we discussed today. Hopefully it will just visually help you navigate your way around some of the words. Cool. So anyway, I'm joined with at the table here with Karen Basher, Manager Legal Services Regulatory, and Christy Law, Chief Advisor to the CEO. We also have in the room our team that's been working on this particular part of the waterfront safety program. So we have Rowan Caldwell, the Project Manager, Liam Farrell, the Manager of Public Space Design, Bradley Schroeder, as the Open Spaces and Parks Manager, and Wendy Henderson, our Manager of Health and Safety, who've all been working on this edge protection task for the last 6+ months at least. Right, so today's briefing is about edge protection, part of the waterfront safety program, and in this briefing we'll cover a walk through what is proposed for 2 particular precincts, an overview of the budget estimate and how this has been created, some context and a brief recap of work done to date and what's brought us to the recommendations that we are going to make on Thursday, or in the paper that's going to be considered on Thursday. We'll talk through some of the legal considerations surrounding the decision, and we'll provide some additional detail about the safety assessment tool and the process that's fed into this recommendation. Thanks, Christy. So the waterfront safety program started in 2023 with a focus on improving, in particular, lighting and edge protection, as well as other safety enhancements, including building maintenance, open space maintenance, and other things as well. In October 2024, we provided you, in a briefing, with a progress update on the waterfront safety program, and specifically we highlighted the work that was being done on spine lighting and edge protection. Regarding the edge protection scope, we said we had received an initial QS estimate for a balustraded solution for edge protection across the waterfront at just under $21 million. As noted in the paper for this week's committee, work on spine lighting is progressing on schedule, with installations completed on the Tug Wharf and Promenade in the Kumatoto precinct, and on Shed 1, 5 and 6 wharves in the Queen's Wharf precinct. You should be able to see all of those, including the Tug Wharf, on the little map that we handed out. Right, so sorry, just carrying on from the briefing in 2024. The coronial inquest into the unfortunate death of Sandy Culkin had been held in August 24. And so when we spoke to you in October, we said that we were awaiting the final findings and recommendations from the coroner. We also did say that we anticipated the coroner's findings would include some criticism of council regarding past actions taken and safety being given insufficient priority. During the amended LTP process in late 24 and early 25, culminating in the 13 February 2025 LTP committee resolution, consideration was given regarding the funding for edge protection on the waterfront in anticipation of the findings and recommendations from the Culkin inquest. And that was basically the resolution that's on the screen there. Okay. In March 2025, the Culkin inquest findings and recommendations were published. There were 6 recommendations were made to the council, and 2 of those specifically focused on edge protection. The coroner recommended the council gives urgent priority to the edge protection work stream of the Waterfront Safety Enhancement Program, including by ensuring that sufficient budget and other resources are earmarked for this purpose. And the council prioritises erecting permanent balustrades around Shed 5 Wharf and Kumatoto Precinct in accordance with the recommendations of its draft risk assessment tool and flowchart. Since then, further design work has progressed to support options for public consultation. This work has helped us to determine whether there are genuine, consentable alternate options to a balustraded solution, particularly for the Taranaki Wharf and the Te Papa precincts. We have also provided you advice regarding health and safety obligations and legal considerations, which we'll now talk about a little bit more. So from a legal perspective, the waterfront is primarily a public space, but when there is work being done or events being held, it can also be a workplace. For example, when council staff or contractors are carrying out repairs and maintenance or doing construction work, and also when events are held on the waterfront. As a workplace, the Health and Safety at Work Act applies, and council has duties as a PCBU. This includes ensuring, so far as is reasonably practicable, that the means of entry and exit to the workplace and anything arising from the workplace are without risks to health and safety of any person. That includes anyone in the vicinity of the workplace. Beyond that, as noted by the coroner, New Zealand does not have a clear legal framework for public spaces like the waterfront. Just wanted to talk a little bit about the assessment process we went through to look at various different options for edge protection. In 2023, WSP, which is for those unfamiliar with WSP, a global engineering and professional services firm, was engaged to develop a bottom-up assessment tool for assessing the risk of falls from wharf edges to inform decision-making on appropriate edge protection measures. This edge assessment tool provides a guide for decision-making regarding the appropriate steps to follow to implement safe, compliant and cost-effective edge protection measures. The flowchart considers quantitative, qualitative and safety by design processes to aid in the design of appropriate edge protection. An element of the flowchart is a risk assessment tool that provides a risk score for an edge protection measure based on quantitative criteria. This helps identify appropriate edge protection measures, and it also helps identify priorities. It forms a key part of the overall process, along with other qualitative and safety by design assessments. So it's quite a sophisticated process that has been designed and that we've been following. Thank you. So we just talked through the precincts that we are referring to in this particular decision, which are just two, Kumatoto and Queen's Wharf. In essence, the two precincts that were highlighted by the coroner in the Sandy Culkin inquiry. For Kumatoto, balustrading focuses on the Tug Wharf Promenade and the front edge of Whitmore Plaza. Whitmore Plaza is on the the right side of the diagram in front of you. And the Tug Wharf Promenade is the piece to the left of that ultimately stretches round past the pontoon towards Shed 5. Anyone having any problems identifying that on the map? Oh, yes, I see what you mean. Yeah, that's yeah.
So blue is where we are proposing balustrading to match existing balustrading in place. So if I'm looking at that correctly, that's the Ngākina Lagoon Bridge. On the inward side, we currently have balustrading, but on the seaward side, we do not. So if you were to balustrade there, we're proposing that the balustrading that's in place would be matched.
Matched to the green?
Matched to the current design of the existing balustrade there.
But for the other places where there is no green, to what is it being matched?
So where it's green, it's existing balustrade. Where it's red, it's proposed to be the new balustrading, which is in the renders, which we can pop up on screen in a moment.
I understand that. So, sorry, I just want to be real clear on this diagram. In the places, for example, in front of the Meridian building, where it's just got bits of blue, what are they being matched to?
We can come back with some images that show you what it looks like.
These are the new bits. this, right? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, so why are they blue, not red?
Yep, so they're blue to match what is existing there now, and we can get you some images at the end of this briefing that shows what they look like.
Thank you.
This is the Whitmore Street end, by the way, down here, and the tug wharf is in essence along here.
I've had my hand up for a question. Can I ask my question?
Oh, yes, most certainly you can. Sorry.
Thank you. It's just the officers referred to PBCU, and I have no idea what that means.
PCBU.
PBCU.
So a PBCU is a person in control. A PCBU is a person in control of a business or undertaking. So it's basically the organisation.
So a plea from someone who doesn't know all these things. Could you assume that we don't know these abbreviations, please?
Certainly.
Thank you.
No worries. Okay, so now we're
Let's just do
oriented.
Councillor Pannett.
Might be best to do questions at the end. That would be my
I've
recommendation.
just done a couple
Chair.
of questions now, so I'd rather actually.
Okay.
Do you want to do your one, Councillor Pannett?
Thank you for the presentation. James, you talked about an unfortunate death. Do you accept that our actions might have, had they been different, would have helped the situation?
Do you have a thought? Yeah.
I think that's let's just not have that question, and we'll do it off later, because I do not feel that question is in any way relevant to this presentation. So we're not going to have that question. So you can move on with your presentation.
Can I ask another question now?
No, you can't. You can. We'll ask.
Well,
We'll now postpone the questions until later.
Which is what I'd suggested. Okay.
Excellent. So now we're all oriented on Kumatoto. So hopefully you can see in the diagram with the colours the elements that are included there in the balustrading, the new balustrading, the ones that match the elements that are already there. The other thing that we will do is increase the height of the existing rock revetment in Kumatoto Plaza and in front of the Meridian building. Does anyone have a better description of rock revetment that might help the councillors?
So if you consider an area like Frank Kitts Park, where we have the rocks that go down to the water, that's rock revetment.
I think one of the things that it's also worth pointing out here in this particular precinct is that, this almost certainly why it was identified this way by the coroner as well, is the thinness of the passageways and the volume of traffic as in people that goes along those thin passageways there. It's a very different layout and configuration to Te Papa Wharf or even Taranaki Street Wharf, where you've got much wider spaces and a lot less of the small cutouts and thin paths. And incidentally, that's one of the reasons why there are very few alternate options to balustrading in order to enhance edge protection in this area. So these pictures show, so again, we're starting down the Whitmore Plaza end, so down the end of the wharf where the police boat and the police officers, looking towards the edge of the Meridian building. So what we're talking about there is the balustrading on the right-hand side, but not on the left-hand side, because that's working wharf.
Is this existing or is this some of the new?
This is proposed.
New stuff?
Proposed new. This is proposed new. Okay, next picture, Christy, thank you. So then continuing towards the Meridian building, if you're familiar with it, there's a little bridge that goes across the Ngākina Lagoon. We have balustrading on one side of that, and so we're going to match it by putting balustrading on the seaward side of that.
Yes, so Councillor Winera, to your question, this is what it would look like when we match, and I can get you some photos if you'd like as well. Okay, so the next one, Christy, thank you. So now we've gone to the opposite end of the Meridian building, and we're on the pontoon where people get the East by West ferry, and you can see the balustrading along the front there. That's what's proposed.
And again, that's another view from the Shed 5 end of the Meridian building, looking back. And you can see how the balustrading on the left is around those cutouts that exist in front of that Meridian building. Okay. Oh, and there's one more. And this is from in front of Foxglove. So you can see balustrading on both sides there, on the seaward side and the side, again, next to the cutout in front of Foxglove. This is around about the area where Sandy Colkin was, it was last identified that he was prior to his unfortunate accident. Well, great, and next, the Queen's Wharf precinct. So this is really around Shed 5 and Shed 6. So what we're doing here is balustrading is proposed to be installed along the promenades adjacent to Shed 5 and Shed 6, and from Shed 6 towards the outer T where the fall is greater than 1 metre. The operational wharf areas that make up the outer T will not be balustraded, and the lower timber platforms will not be balustraded either, as these provide operational and recreational access to the water. Let me describe this. So these here are the lower platforms. If you go down there, you'll notice that there's some stairs that you can go down, and then there's a kind of lower platform. So what we're not suggesting that we balustrade along that lower platform, just at the top parts of it. Okay. And the same over on the Shed 5 side. There's a lower platform you can step down to there. And we're not suggesting that we balustrade around the outer T. So that is in front of Shed 5. So if you're going down that incredibly thin piece of walkway there where there's a lot of traffic, that's what it will look like with a balustrade up. Thanks, Christy. And that's round by where Ferg's Kayaks is on Shed 6. Cool. And just a point there, can you just go back a couple of slides, Christy? And one more. Thanks. Point out that finishes here. So it just covers this corner around here and then stops at this point here. Okay, so that's because this is Frank Kitzer, obviously, so we're just talking to going to the end of that point there. Thank you, Christy. Okay, so budget estimate. So as I mentioned earlier on, the initial estimate for full balustrading across all the waterfront, including Taranaki Street, Te Papa and Schaefer's, was just under $21 million. The current estimate of what we've just shown you in those pictures and described to you on those maps is about $7 million to do that. And that's based on what we know to date through concept design, and it will be updated as we move into developed and detailed design. If this work is approved at Thursday's committee, it's proposed that officers provide you with a briefing update at the end of the final design stage, the detailed design, and confirm pricing at that point. In regards to the actual fabrication and construction work, we would go to market and get competitive tenders for that. So there's obviously still an opportunity to provide some tension to the pricing and the cost. So next steps, the paper is coming to you on Thursday. This is, as I said, just for Kamatoto and Queen's Wharf precincts, the 2 precincts and 2 areas identified as priority by the Sandy Colkin coroner. If approved, our next step is to progress resource consents, complete the design and do the procurement activity. So in essence, we're ready to move on actually getting this piece of work done and put in place. We will also, in parallel with that, finalise options for public consultation on the remaining precincts, so Taranaki Street Wharf and Te Papa. And we'll bring that to the relevant committee for approval to proceed. And on the assumption that it goes ahead following public consultation, we would return to the relevant committee for you to determine what to do for those other 2 precincts. That's the end of the presentation. Any questions?
Councillor Paddock.
Thanks for the presentation again. Can we just get a picture up of the existing permanent fencing at the moment around near Chafers? Is that possible to put that up? Just make sure that so that councillors can see. Yeah, and will you be able to provide some images of other waterfronts around the country and around the world? I know you talked about that before.
We can. There's so many different examples.
Or just maybe
like
just a couple. I mean, I could Google
so many, right?
But I just think it would be useful, particularly around New Zealand. Yeah, that would be helpful. And then just the last question I have for now was, people have asked questions about the cost, which is fair enough. I presume the cost is where it's at because it's such a premium public space, and so it's not just a matter of knocking up a few poles.
Correct. It's not a matter of just knocking up a few poles. Also, it's a marine environment, so the product needs to be able to withstand the rigours of a marine environment. It's there is, I guess, maybe a higher level of requirement or higher level of sustainability required for any products that we use in this environment, and that increases the cost.
Okay, so you couldn't get it cheaper?
Well, absolutely, we will try our very best to get it cheaper. The estimates that we've done so far have really been based on cases from other cities where they've spent money, particularly Auckland. They had quite an expensive solution. We don't think we'll need to spend that much money, but that's why we go through a competitive procurement process to see what kind of price we can get.
Councillor Wanera.
Thank you for the illustrations. They're very illustrative. The paper itself I found quite difficult to pass, particularly in respect of the 3 approaches and 7 options which were proposed. And it struck me that despite all of these different configurations of a decision that could be made, no consultation is recommended. I guess the question is, why would we not consult when there remains so much uncertainty about actually what the design might look like, given all of these options? Surely that's what consultation is for.
Correct. The number of options for the 2 precincts that we've put up are fairly limited by the nature of the size and shape of the spaces down there. So that's why I was mentioning before that if you look at, say, Te Papa and Taranaki Street, there's wide open spaces. And there are a number of different approaches that can be taken to the design of edge protection, some of which we've worked through, and we're happy to provide further details later if necessary, but those designs are still being worked through. But when it comes down to these 2 precincts, and the particular areas that we've highlighted, there are very, very limited options when you go through and look at what can be an effective edge protection. We've had both our health and safety and our city design folks looking through it, looking at all the different possibilities and weighing those up through the various tools that we've been given to use to assess what could work effectively to provide edge protection. And honestly, it comes down to pretty much balustrading in those areas that we've identified.
Councillor Free.
Perhaps my question's a wee bit similar to Nico's, actually. I thought that our process was going to be to go out for consultation, and for some reason we're not doing consultation on 2 of the precincts, but we're proposing to do consultation on the remaining the remaining ones. On what basis do we, if we don't need to consult for these two, why do we need to consult for the other 5 or whatever there are?
I think because of a similar answer to Councillor Nico's question, there are a greater range of options for those other 2 or those other parts of the waterfront. For these particular parts, there's only very limited options that can provide effective edge protection. The other reason that we're bringing it to you now is because while the resolution was made in February and March when we got the coroner's results, it's very explicit what the coroner has said about the recommendations to council, and very explicit about the areas that we need to actually focus on, which are the ones that we've actually got here. So we're providing the opportunity to you to go ahead and follow that advice from the coroner and put the measures in place in these 2 precincts. There will not be really any other options other than the balustrading.
Just another question, if I may. So we're matching part of what's already there, and then we're providing new. Is there much of a cost difference do you anticipate between the cost of matching versus the cost of brand new?
Kia ora. So the balustrading in Kumatoto, sorry, can you hear? The balustrading in Kumatoto is matching the existing, which is down at the far end of the Te Papa Promenade by the Wellington sign. The other existing is what's on the bridges in the Kumatoto precinct. So there's 2 bridges that currently have balustrades on the wharf, and so we would match those designs. The existing balustrade down at the Wellington sign would be, from what we've seen, the most cost-effective option.
So even if it comes to consulting on whether people want to pay a premium for existing, matching existing rather than just something would actually fit the coroner's advice, do you not think that there's actually room for some community input on that value for money question?
So that's for me or for James?
No, I think it's for James actually.
So the type of balustrading that's been identified in the visuals it's not just an aesthetic choice. It is a choice based on the safety features of that type of balustrading, and it comes down to things like the ability of people to get through, get under, get over it, and things like that, and how robust, etc. the balustrading is. So again, a relatively limited set of options when you start to consider those factors. So for example, like a strung rope between poles, that would not do the job from a health and safety perspective, so it wouldn't meet the criteria. So therefore it's kind of like pool fencing. If you think about pool fencing, right? There is only certain types of fencing that you can actually use around a pool because it has to provide that protection. So it's similar to the situation on the wharf, and also it being a marine environment, there is challenges with how robust it's going to be in that type of environment as well.
Question, but
Councillor Calvert.
Thank you. I'm not going to put my camera on because I'm not looking the best. Can I just ask whether we could get if we decide to go ahead with this fencing for these 2 parts, could they be put in place before we went out to consult on other spaces so that the public actually get an opportunity to see what it really does look like and what it means?
So the timing of going out to public consultation, there is obviously, you have some influence over that. The timing of us completing design, getting consenting, getting the balustrading fabricated and implemented, we have less flexibility around that. If we were to start right now, it would take a certain amount of time to get that done. That would probably overlap a consultation process, but it's within your decision making to delay that consultation process if you so wished.
And what would be the impacts if we did delay that? I mean, it just from a regulatory or from a health and safety perspective?
There's no regulatory impact. What, in essence, you're doing is you are maintaining the current risk status of the remaining pieces of wharf. But you'll note at the moment we have temporary fencing there, so to some extent that's mitigated.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wadera.
So this is the second tranche of work, as I understand it, on waterfront safety in general, the first being the lighting lot. How come we blew so much of the allocated budget on the lighting? It really, this is a real question. Like, it seems as if there's, you're proposing that some fairly serious work be done on waterfront safety with regard to fencing. But I understand that we have run out of a lot of the money that was previously earmarked for that because we built, bespoke fibre optic smart poles with designs on each of them.
So, as I understand, the total cost we've spent to date is $3.5 million. There is the work is not yet finished, so there will be more spent on the lighting. I think it's probably fair to say, though, that that initial estimate was done prior to getting a full understanding of what was actually required, what would work and what would be resilient and what would meet standards from a lighting perspective.
Okay. Okay. Were there standards that mandated we put fibre optic things in them to make them CCTV ready and make them so flash?
So there's no standard about the putting fibre into the light poles, but with the work that we've done across the other council teams, the addition of fibre is not such it's not a huge cost, and it does allow for more resilient CCTV down on the waterfront. So we currently have some issues with CCTV only being on wireless connections and line of sight and not being reliable. So having these poles being smart enabled and modernised allows us to continue to have the most future flexibility for adding technology for safety in the future. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And last question. I understand the final results of the judgment are pretty much yet to come out. Sorry, I shouldn't say judgment because it is in fact not a judgment. The conclusions of the coroner. Do we actually know that anything less than what is being proposed will be insufficient? That is to say, the massive improvements that we have already made with regard to lighting, etc., are we certain those will not in fact be enough?
So just to clarify, the findings of the Calkin inquest have been released and finalised, and the coroner in that inquest was, I think, pretty clear that lighting was not sufficient from her perspective.
Deputy Mayor Foon.
Yeah, kia ora, thank you. Just the edge assessment tool, was there any breakdown of each section, and were there different priorities within that scope?
Yes, correct. There are breakdown by it is done by section, and there are different priorities within it, and they, interestingly enough, match what the coroner said, with Kumatoto and Queen's Wharf being the high priorities.
So is there any difference within that area that we're talking about rather than the whole
No,
area? So
I think the granularity
yeah.
is the same as what we've presented. Correct. We can I? Oh, let me just.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is it correct? The granularity of the arrests. The precincts.
Yes,
Does it go lower than that?
we can break it to lower than that to go edge by edge. I can. Yep. Tool, you can take a specific edge and assess a specific edge. So if you say you've got Kumatoto, you've got different edges there. The Tug Wharf, for example, is wider than the Tug Wharf Promenade. So you can assess each area individually and then aggregate the scores into give you a precinct-wide score. However, the tool provides a score and aligns it back to the WCC risk matrix. And in all instances, when you break it to a granular step, it doesn't change whether it's high risk or very high risk or medium. It still stays within the range. So right. Yes, you can break it down, but you still end up with a very similar result.
Yeah, okay. Are we able to have a look at that at some point? Thank you.
Councillor Free.
Just to clarify, there's temporary fencing there at the minute. Is that considered, is that safe? Is that making it safe in the interim?
Presumably it is, otherwise they wouldn't have done it, surely.
Otherwise it wouldn't.
Kia ora everyone, Shane Binning, Waterfront Manager. In the last 2 years, in many instances where the temporary fencing has been present, there have been no reported incidents of accidental falls into the water.
So is it reasonable to say this isn't as urgent as it might have been if we didn't have anything there?
In Kumatoto area, which is an area we're discussing right now, that does not have temporary fencing.
Oh, okay.
The introduction of temporary fencing there would introduce additional unintentional hazards. So that's why temporary fencing is not there, because it would almost narrow the corridor to less than 1 metre or 1.5 metres, which would not be appropriate. So that area keeps me up at night.
Okay, oh, that's useful. And then the fencing that we've got, is the intention, or the fencing we're planning to get, is the intention that it would stop accidental falls, like people if they lose their balance or whatever? Or is it the intention it would absolutely stop anyone getting to the waterfront?
It's accidental falls. That's what we're concerned about.
Okay. But you consider that the solution is needed. It needs to be of this quality to really guard against it, like a rope, but you mentioned ropes before.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit why a lesser solution wouldn't suffice?
I would also like to say that temporary fencing is exactly that, temporary. Under the building code, we could get into trouble for having it out there for too much longer. It is also not fixed permanently to the ground surface, meaning it can move. A key part of the building code for the designs that we have produced is that they meet crowd loading. That's important. These are event spaces, large commuter spaces, where lots of weight could be pushed against the fencing. That is a key difference why the balustrades that we have presented and what you see down on the waterfront in the existing areas are there to meet those crowd loading scenarios. For example, we might have a fireworks event and there might be many thousands of people at the wharf's edge. That's where the building code is very specific around the weight loadings. So a fence under that you might see around a pool or at your home or around other office buildings, that wouldn't suffice and meet those building code standards.
So can I just ask a question on that, what you've just said? So where we have had a major event on the waterfront, have there been any incidents of people falling in the sea?
There have been, unfortunately.
Can you be specific?
2 years ago, Matariki 2023, where there was a gap. There was no fencing. A young boy, 2-year-old, went into the water. And then we had a case of having up to 5 people in the water trying to rescue them.
Whereabouts was that?
That was along Taranaki Street Promenade, and there was the young boy found a area that had not had any temporary fencing in place.
Thanks.
Councillor Free, was your question answered there before? About the type of fencing?
Yeah, it was. I've got another one. You can stick me back if you need to.
I don't know, you
just
ask it.
I'm just a bit concerned about this crowd loading business. What risk would what risk is created by people actually pushing other people against structures, not necessarily the fence, but anywhere on the waterfront? Do we actually have that as a risk? People being crushed?
Under the building code, it would be risk of collapse. The fence falling over if there was too much force applied against it.
Okay.
Whenever we do an event on the waterfront, there is a health and safety plan. In the health and safety plan, the volume of crowds, etc., and necessary protections are considered.
So the volume can be controlled if needs be. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Councillor O'Neill.
Kia ora, I just wanted to understand, and I think it may have been Councillor Calvert was talking around this partai earlier, the implication that if we were to go out and consult on all possible changes to the waterfront as soon as practicable. How different would this consultation be? I'm kind of looking for, if we're going from 15 months, how much would it delay getting fencing? What would be the impact on the mahi?
So in particular for these two precincts, there's no real further work can be done without an indication of whether we're going to go ahead with this design or not. There is, I think, a little bit of design left, correct, for Te Papa and Taranaki Street wharfs. But we will be very close to being ready for consultation. In fact, initially we were planning to come to you with a consultation document very shortly.
If we were to hold up the release of the 7.6 million until consultation was done, what would the implication be?
I think pragmatically the consultation can't really take place now until after the election. And so what that means is that, and by the time that that's gone out for consultation, come back, recommendations made, hearings maybe if possible, I'm not sure, and a decision made, you're probably looking at a good 6 to 9 months. So that's the kind of delay that you would have on those two precincts that we've identified.
Thank you.
Councillor Randall.
Thank you. You started with saying you were worried about accidental falls, but isn't it correct that these balustrades have vertical elements to them so that they also can't be climbed? And are you actually trying to protect from climbing as well?
Yes, we are. So part of making sure the design would meet building code requirements is that we need to look at balustrading solutions that would prevent certainly a child from climbing on them. We will always have the challenge of members of the public who potentially want to try and climb over those, but what we're doing is working to what the building code requirements ask us to in terms of preventing small children from being able to climb over those.
Okay, and how far above the ground is the top of the fence?
From memory, it's 1,100 mils, but I'll look to my colleagues to confirm. Yes, 1,100 mils.
Okay. We talked about getting cost effective. What is the base cost of the actual balustrade that's proposed before installation?
So for the QS work that we've completed to date, we have estimated this on a $3,400 per linear metre cost.
Sorry, would you say it again?
So $3,400 per linear metre.
And why, what's it made of?
Steel.
Steel.
That's probably the low end of what was spent in Auckland for the equivalent.
Okay. And
last question.
Sorry, and my last question is, in terms of the vertical elements, how far apart are they? You know, how much can you see through them, and why is it that width chosen?
So it's what they're now.
So with the building code, the vertical balusters can be no more than 100 mils apart. So that's a building code requirement that we need to work to, because the walls under the building code are classed as buildings, so we need to align with the building code. So that's where we get our 1100 high, that's where we get our 100 mil maximum between balusters, and that's where we get our non-climbable for children 6 and under.
Okay, and that's what we're getting, 100 mil gaps?
Correct, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Rogers.
In the paper around the cost estimates, there was a note to the estimates that the QS figures for alternate edge protection are subject to further geotechnical environmental assessments. Could you briefly describe what was undertook to understand whether any geotechnical risks would be at place for the wharf if the balustrades were to be installed?
Okay, sure. So there's no geotechnical risk to the wharf structure itself. The reason for more geotechnical work was some of the alternative or approach 2 designs in the Long Te Papa Wharf would potentially require some additional piling that is independent to the wharf structure, and that is what, to provide a clearer cost estimate, that's what we would need the geotechnical information for. So none of the designs that we've got have any effect on the strength and structure of the wharf. We've had an engineer on the design team to sign all this away.
I guess that raises a different question for me, because I think you had earlier referenced that what we had been shown before was what was going to be delivered for $7 million, and we hadn't seen any alternate protection there. The alternate edge protection you just talked about was around Te Papa. So what's the 7.157 for alternate and balustrade edge protection around this precinct?
So that's the design that's there for that we're looking at is balustrading on the Tug Wharf Promenade and Tug Wharf and Queen's Wharf. The area around the Ngākina Lagoon, that's been clouded, and that's the area for there's alternative designs in that space as well, and that would also need looking at geotechnically.
Right.
So it's just a small part within the Kumatoto precinct.
But that's out of scope for decision today?
Correct.
I'm just confused as to why that is included in the paper at this stage, like having both of those options there if they're not options that we're considering at the moment. It just makes it kind of confusing to understand what we're looking at when there are lots of complex parts in this, and Councillor Winera alluded to the 7 different methods and the 3 different options. So yeah, just seeking clarity around the actual cost. The $7 million and the alternate and balustrade edge protection is not part of the scope of the decision that we are making. Thank you.
Councillor Chung.
Thanks very much. I've pieced together some of the things that we've talked about. So excuse me if I forgot any of them out of sequence, but the reason for not going into consultation now before we actually do any work is because of the timing issues. And so part of that is that we don't have any temporary fencing in the Kumatomo area. And I've also heard that the reason why we don't have temporary fencing along there is because the temporary fencing actually takes up a lot of room on the narrow path, and so therefore would narrow the walkway to around about 1 metre. So is it conceivable that we could actually, yes, go ahead with consultation, delay that, and then with those areas that are not protected at the moment with temporary fencing, we could actually block off all access to them in the event of a large public gathering. So any time that we actually have more people than we think could actually fit safely along that 1 metre walkway, take that access way away, so block that off. And so that would actually take care of the issue that this may be dangerous to anyone sort of going over that small area if we have temporary fencing in there. Could we actually not do that? Wouldn't that be a solution? That way we can actually get everything done before we go to consultation. Go to consultation to get the public to actually comment on what they think about all of this.
I think the challenge with that is, first of all, a complete alternate solution to this whole thing is to block off access to the waterfront. That's the solution, and you don't have to put up fencing if you do that. But if you were to try and block off parts of the waterfront at certain times, that creates an operational challenge, right? Identifying the moments or the occasions when there is going to be a volume of folk using that particular area to the extent that it is creating enhanced risk. So trying to identify those things, it may not be as easy as saying, oh, there's a Wrexham game, everyone's going to walk that way, let's block it off for the Wrexham game kind of thing. Because quite frequently, just people walking home at night after work, there can be a lot of people coming through there the weekends, various different times on the weekends, depends what the weather's like. You get bigger crowds, etc., depending on a number of different factors. So it'd be quite difficult operationally to identify when those moments and times are. Second thing is it's pretty inconveniencing for the public to suddenly block off an area. And then we would need to communicate that, and then we'd have to think about reputationally, how does that work with the public, etc. So there's some real complications, I think, around just kind of trying to do that on an agile basis. So I understand what you're trying to say, but I think that's probably a difficult thing to do. I think the other point worth making is, yes, we're ready to go ahead and do this. Yes, the coroner has said this is the priority. But the other thing to consider is that, you know, in essence, what we've done is we've gone through this entire process of thinking about all the different options and looking at this from a you know, keeping the public safe perspective. Is in these particular areas where we've identified it, there really isn't much of an option other than balustrading, and that's why we're here.
Councillors, for context, on any one point from our sensor data, from our pedestrian and movement sensors on the waterfront, at any one point on the waterfront there's over 8,000 movements, pedestrian movements, cyclists, trucks, vans, scooters. So that gives you a little bit of context. So over, I think that's 2.8 million movements past a point over a year, and 8,000 a day.
Okay. Okay, thanks. I understand that. Thank you. But those 8,000 movements, they're not along this small, narrow choke point along Kumitomo. So what we're addressing is actually that small part where we don't have temporary fencing because we narrow it further. So along that particular strip there, you're not getting 8,000 movements a day, whenever. And it's only, and when I look at the amount of people that may actually be there for a particular function, I'm talking about things like maybe Makariti or when you're having a festival down there. So we do know in advance that we're going to get a lot more people down there at that particular time. So the question is that I still think that it's valid actually to narrow that by putting temporary fencing in there, and it won't be affected by it. So do we have any data to actually show the number of people that actually walk along those narrow strips at any particular time?
Data can be provided. We have 10 sensors across the waterfront, and I'm happy to provide data to the councillors.
Deputy Mayor Food.
I understand that in a past report it was recommended that we use green light on the water and reflective lighting. Did we do that at that time? I think it was from 2016, sorry.
That was prior to my time, but my understanding is that was primarily around amenity lighting and to highlight the wharf structure under the promenades, but that would not be necessarily done for safety purposes.
Okay, so that wasn't a safety recommendation?
Not that I'm aware, Councillor.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Paddock.
Just at paragraph 102, risks and mitigations, do you have any reflections on the reputation of the organisation as a large public institution if we don't vote for this fencing? And also, I just wanted to double check, if an organisation doesn't follow the recommendations of a coroner, are there any sanctions at all?
So recommendations of a coroner are not binding. There's no legal sanction to not follow. What I would say is that we do have a current coronial inquiry into Isaac Levine's death. It's the same coroner will be sitting on that as sat on the Calkin inquest, and I think we can expect that she will ask what we have done in relation to her findings and recommendations.
So, sorry, actually, I missed that. Would you just say what's the coroner's future involvement with this case?
So Coroner Gregg was assigned as the coroner on the Calkin inquest, and she has also been assigned as the coroner for the investigation into Isaac Levine's death, and he was the person who, in 2023, I believe.
Yeah, he came off the Te Papa Wharf.
Oh, right, okay, thank you.
The inquest is in November, is that correct?
I'm not aware that it's been set down yet.
Councillor Free.
I'm still thinking this is an awful lot of cost, but just for a comparison, I know we protect water edges, for example, along the Evans Bay Cycleway, there's a wooden fence with wire netting. How much is that per metre? Maybe that's not an answer someone could give me straight away, but...
Liam?
Okay.
We can find out, Councillor.
Yeah. And I guess I'd like to go back to that very special, matching. Is that a lot more expensive than the new fencing we're proposing?
Just on the, if I can just go back to the wire one, that would be something that we potentially would not be able to build under a building consent. So there's different regulations and requirements on the building consent for on the wharf than on a, say, a footpath or a cycleway.
That's interesting.
So
yeah.
if it's horizontal wires, then that's an option that we would not be able to get.
No, it's wire netting. Wire netting on a wooden frame.
Yeah, so we can do some wire netting depending on the size of it. So there's requirements for that. The second part of your question was?
The second part was around the bespoke, matching
yes.
areas versus the new.
Yeah, so the balustrade that we're proposing is the same balustrade that's currently in place down on the end of Te Papa Wharf. That is the most cost economic balustrade that we've looked at. That's actually cheaper than mesh and it's cheaper than rods.
Okay, my question was around, is it worth trying to match what we've got, or would it actually be more cost effective to just have in bulk the new fencing? I'm just concerned about trying to get value for money, because obviously this is, we might need to do this, but it is a lot of money.
Yeah, if we were to match, say, the bridge the Ngākina Lagoon, yes, that would be a more expensive option than just going with the vertical balusters option, yes. One of the things that we have to do with the balustrades is construct them for the marine environment, but they also have to withstand something called C5 crowd loading, which means that they have to be structurally strong enough under the building code. So these are the things that make up the price. That would be that would be one of the more expensive options, yes. However, it would match the other side. So if you were to change it, you would then have to change two sides. Otherwise, you might match, it might not look quite right.
I understand.
That is the end of our questions. That is the end of the session. So thank you very much. That was very informative.
Kia ora.